welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a really fun card, but first I want to remind you to follow me across social media. Those links are going to be down in the description box below. Also, if you haven't already, you can click the subscribe button if you want to have videos from me pop up in your feed, and if you enjoy this video, you can give it a thumbs up down below. That always helps. Today I'm going to be making this ugly sweater Christmas card with the ugly sweater background builder stamp set from Joy Claire. Now all the supplies that I'll be using are going to be listed and linked down in the description box below, so if I forget to say the name of a stamp set or a tool I'm using, all that information is going to be down there with links. Now this is one of Joy Claire's stamps, a larger stamp set, so it's 6 by 8. This is a really great size. It's going to fit an A2 card panel, whether you go horizontal or vertical with the stamp set. You can even go on a bit of an angle with these and it'll still work, and you won't have to double stamp or stamp twice and kind of line it up. Now to start off with, I'm going to be using an A2 card base that is white, that's side folding, and then I'll go ahead and use an A2 panel that's cream colored. I'm going to be stamping on the cream colored panel, and then I'll do a little bit of die cutting and you'll be able to see that white peek out from behind. I'm using my Misty to do my stamping today, and I'm using my creative corners. I'm using it in the bottom left hand corner. That is going to bump it away from the side and the bottom. That just gives me a little bit more wiggle room, so I don't have to kind of have my paper out in the middle of the stamping tool. I still have that corner I can line it up each and every time in. I've got that little bit of wiggle room on the left and the bottom. I also went ahead and used that straight piece, that L piece. That's going to help me keep the stamps nice and straight. I'm using two different colors of ink to stamp today. I'm using Ladybug and Olive Grove. Both are Memento Dewdrop ink pads. I'm starting off with Olive Grove and that reindeer and tree stamp. I'm stamping that down onto my panel. Now I'm using my Misty today, so one stamp did a really good job, but I'm using my Misty, so why? I'm also not lining this up perfectly in the center, but if you wanted to make this easier on yourself, you could line your stamp up perfectly centered in the middle of your card panel, and then just flip your paper each time you're stamping on the top and bottom. I'm going to have to move my stamps each and every time. That's okay with me, but I just wanted to throw that out there that you could take that little bit of extra time, center your first stamp, then you don't have to move each of your stamps every time. Now here I'm using my creative corner to kind of push that stamp up, make it nice and straight, but the top of my little creative corner was getting in the way of my hinges closing. So I just flip it over, flip it around, make sure the little arm is facing down this time. I bump it up over on the right side, make sure it's nice and straight. Then I just push up on that stamp, and that's going to make sure it's nice and straight. I can close the lid of my Misty, pick it up, and I've got my grid marks that I can look through and make sure that I got it straight. And that just makes sure each and every time that I'm not going to mess up. This is kind of a lot of stamping, and I'm moving my stamps each and every time. So just making sure that I have them right before I stamp them down assures me that I'm not going to screw up a panel at the last second. This is one of those cards where it's a lot of stamping, but once you get your stamp lined up, you can just continue to stamp it out and stamp it out and stamp it out. So if you have a card design that you want to make multiples of, or you have an occasion you want to make multiples of, like for Christmas or thank you cards even, this would be a really good design to do it with. Once you get that first stamp lined up, you can continue to crank it out each and every time. So I stamped the little triangles with the red ink, then I'm going to go back to the Olive Grove and stamp another design on both sides of that, top and bottom, and I'll just continue to do this throughout the panel until Next, I'm going to go in with this very teeny tiny little stamp. Now this one I want to make a little bit closer to the last one I stamped, just because it's like a little add-on. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and stamp in the same Olive Grove ink. I ink that up, and then I'll just go ahead and stamp it down a couple of times on both sides, again, the top and the bottom. And it's just this itty bitty little design that adds the perfect little touch. Now you could leave this as is, you could stop at any point and not go do the full panel, but I'm going to continue stamping. So next up, I've got this little snowflake strip. I ink that up with the ladybug ink, and I'll stamp that on both the top and the bottom from my last little stamp that I did. I'll continue stamping even more, and I'll go ahead and add that tiny little strip again on the other side. So I'm kind of coming back and doing that same pattern over again. So my next stamp after I do this one more time is going to be that little, it looks like a little S almost. So I'll go ahead and grab that out, line it up, and that finished off the bottom portion of my panel. So now all I need to do is do one more stamp on the top. So as soon as I stamp this next little S portion, I'll go ahead and go right back in with my. Whenever I'm making backgrounds like this, I like to make a pattern out of it. I think it looks a little bit better when I do it that way. So I finished off with my final little triangles in the ladybug ink right at the top. You can see it lined up perfectly because I used my creative corners and my grid in my Misty, and it just worked out perfectly, and they lined up straight each and every time. I love it when things work out like this. So once I had the panel done, it was time to die cut a little neck hole in the top. So I grabbed this circle die. This is from Craft and Desert Divas. You can use any circle die. I just like this because it has the stitch scallop on the inside. So I'm actually going to use that to die cut, kind of like you would have a collar shirt right on the inside of a sweater. Now, to make sure I don't rip any of my pattern off with painter's tape, I like to go ahead and stick it to my hand a few times. That way it takes a little bit of the sticky off. Then you can go ahead and stick it down and you know it's not going to rip your paper. I die cut that circle from my pattern paper that I made, and I also die cut it from red cardstock, and that's going to give me that nice scallop border. I need to go ahead and dress up my card a little bit to make it look more like a sweater. There are a couple different ways you can do this. The first way I'm going to show you is to make a bow tie from the envelope punch board. So I'm starting off with this 6-inch piece of red cardstock. It's cut to 1 inch by 6 inches. And right at 3 inches, I'm going to go ahead and punch on both sides right in the center. Then I'll go ahead and line up the bottom. You can kind of see I got it right at that halfway mark where my punch is that I can see through. I'll go ahead and put that down on the left side and punch that on the top, and then flip it around and do the same thing, line it up right in the middle of that punch and punch it again to give those nice ends on it. Those are going to fold into the center and they'll match perfectly because I'm using the same punch. I flip the cardstock around to the other end and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Punch right there at the center of the punch on both the top and the bottom. That's my first piece. My second piece, I need to go ahead and cut the little fishtail that goes behind the bow. So I have my 3-inch piece of cardstock, and I'll stick both ends inside the punch, kind of center it right in there, and then I'll punch straight down. Then I need to go horizontally and put this in my envelope punch board as well. Then in the center, I'll go ahead and line this up, kind of center it right there, and give it a punch on the top and on the bottom to create that fishtail look. For the actual bow, I want to break up the fibers a little bit, so I'm using the bone folder and just kind of running it along the edges of the bow. That's going to curl them a little bit, make them easier to bend, and not make them have those crinklies you get when you kind of fold paper in on itself. So I just give that a nice run with my bone folder, put some adhesive in the middle, and fold in both sides. Then I can go ahead and wrap around my little extra piece. This is only about not even 1/4 of an inch wide, and then I just cut it to be long enough to wrap around to the back of the bow. That gives me that nice finished look on the front. Then I can go ahead and add a little bit more adhesive. I like to use a dry adhesive, and I just place the bow right on top of that fishtail banner, and I've got this great little bow tie that can go on my card. I put that on there, and look how cute that is. I just love the way that looks. And you could finish your cards like this, even add a little button if you wanted to, but I'm going to do mine a little bit differently. I'm going to make mine a little bit more feminine, I would say. So I've got my little sweater panel ready to go on my card base. I've added some adhesive to the back of it, and I'll just load that onto my A2 side folding white card base. You could use any color card base here if you wanted to. I just like the look of white behind this. Then I've got some glossy accents or any other liquid glue would do on the back of that red scallop circle. I added that right down onto the little neck hole that I made. It fits like a glove since it's the same die. I made a little poinsettia die cut. I'll leave that die linked down below as well. I went ahead and attached that right to the left side, and then across each one of those little scallops I'll add a little dot of liquid pearls to create a really nice finished look. I love the way this one turned out. It almost gives like a little brooch feel to the sweater. Absolutely love it. So that was done. Here's a few closer looks at the finished sweater card before I take you on and we'll do the inside. So for the inside of the card, I used a different stamp set. I used the 3D poinsettia stamp set from Joy Claire Stamps. This is one of my favorites. I love the sentiments in this. They're nice and bold and scripty. They're gorgeous. So I grabbed the Merry Christmas sentiment from that stamp set. I'm inking that up with the same Ladybug ink, and I'm stamping this down using my Mini Misty onto this scallop die cut. Again, I'll have the die cuts that I'm using linked down below as well. Then in that same stamp set, there are these little sprigs, evergreen sprigs. So I grabbed a few of those, inked those up with the same Olive Grove ink that I used on the outside, and I'll stamp those down on a few sides. Then on each one of the little berries, I added a dot of liquid pearls. That is why I did this on a die cut. I wanted to give the liquid pearls a little bit of time to dry. So once these dried, then I went ahead and added some adhesive on the die cut and put that on the inside of the card to finish the entire thing. There's a closer look at the inside of the card put together as well as the outside once more. I absolutely adore the way this card turned out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That is going to do it for me today. There are links on the left side of your screen you can click on, as well as subscribing to my channel over there. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and happy crafting!